Welcome to today's masterclass. This is a 2-hour learning session, and by the end of this masterclass, you will be on your way to starting your own podcast. And my name is Rose Davidson. I'm from rosedavidson.com and talking with the experts as well. That's my podcast, and the Healing Through Love show I co-host with the lovely Charlene Lynch. So the world is changing, and so are the ways we consume information. Podcasts have become a really fantastic way to stay on top of what's happening in our communities, and we learn about current trends and things that might impact us, and it also provides entertainment on our way home or when we're out jogging or walking or whatever the case may be. So this 2-hour masterclass will show you how to create a successful show while increasing your brand exposure and using broadcasting, which builds an audience eagerly awaiting each episode that you release. So there is a huge, huge opportunity in podcasting right now. And now is a really great time to be starting your podcast. Now, research tells us that there are over 600 million blog posts on the internet today and over 40 million active YouTube channels, which is really great. But there are only about 3.5 million podcasts registered. So, and out of those, you might find that maybe 85% of those are actually active. So there's, people register their podcast, but they don't get past the first 5 episodes, perhaps because they find it a bit tedious, or too much time is, taken up, and all of those sorts of things. So there are, things that impede their progress of launching more podcasts or continuing with their podcast. And in fact, only 45% of podcasts don't reach their 5th episode. And, that's quite a lot. And so now is really your great opportunity to start and grow and make money with your podcast. And, you should really start today. There are some personal reasons to start your podcast. You're really passionate about your topic, or you have something that you want to share with others. It's an easy platform to create an account. You can create long-form content out of it. Podcasting can help you build your personal brand. It can be an alternative revenue source. What else is there? It's minimal. It doesn't cost a lot of money to start a podcast, despite what others say. Podcasting can be more fulfilling than video, especially if you don't like to appear on screen. And you can actually use your free time productively. So if you have free time, podcasting is a great way to fill up those extra hours if you don't have a hobby. You can repurpose your podcast episodes by targeting specific audiences. There is less competition compared to other media forms like, social media like Facebook or LinkedIn or, any of those other apps that you might use. Podcasting is still growing. So, as I said before, there's only about 3.5 million podcasts out there. So, and, compared to blog posts or YouTube videos. You can redirect traffic to important pages on your website if you have a website. And there's potential to monetize your podcast through ad placement. Other reasons, maybe, you can interview other people. I prefer that type of format for my own podcast, but a lot of other people like to do it solo. It's perfect for you if you like to connect with others, as I do. You enjoy helping others, and, you are accessible to your audience 24/7. So really great. So, imagine if you could fall in love with podcasting and build your audience by mastering a simple, effortless process that, saves you time, money, and effort. And that's a really great thing. It's the time and the effort that it takes to podcast. And if you've already launched a podcast, but, you don't quite have all the tools together and, things aren't really working out for you, this masterclass will help you through all of that. So if you stay till the end, I've got 2 special bonuses for you. plus one lucky person who attends today will win a free scholarship valued at $1,495.97. So thank you so much for being here today. A little bit about me. I am an entrepreneur. Firstly, I'm a podcast host and producer, and I am a podcast mentor. I have done live stream presenting and producing. I have written, I co-authored a #1 best-selling book. I've been featured in Brains magazine as an executive contributor. I am the co-founder of a social enterprise, Healing Through Love, which is a domestic and family violence awareness initiative, which we started in Adelaide, Australia in 2018. And I'm also involved with another charity called Global Glamping Charities, where we are supporting those who may find themselves homeless through natural disasters, domestic violence, or through economic circumstances, like they can't afford their rent because it's too high. So we provide transportable homes for them to live in on a rental basis. I've also given talks on Her Story International Online Women's Summit in 2021. I was also doing the International Women's Day Summit, Global Summit in 2021. I have spoken at an International Women's Day Create Momentum Online Summit in 2022. I've also been featured in Mums in Business magazine. I've written articles for the Business Builders Group and for Business and their learning platform. I've written articles for Saving Brothers, You Matter. I've also written articles for SA Women and, of course, for Brains magazine. And I have also been featured on the ABC radio in both Adelaide and in Hobart, and on Coast FM in Adelaide. So this masterclass is for you if you want to start a podcast and you are serious about building authority and credibility for your business using podcasting. This webinar or masterclass is not for you if you are not coachable and you are not committed to reaching a wider audience that you currently have on social media. So this is my 4-step OPAL system, and we'll just go through each step as it comes. So the first one is to organise. And this is where you lay the foundations for your professional podcast, from learning the importance of your legal requirements, choosing the right strategy, having the perfect name and cover art, setting up your podcast on all the right channels for distribution, and for setting up the perfect studio on a budget, because people often say that it's expensive to start a podcast, but that is not the case. The second step is to produce. And this is where you present and you host your podcast and you become the podcast wizard. You must have you need to have the ability to make your podcast feel at ease and allow them to share their information so that it's understandable to the audience, to you, and they just feel like, I run mine like a coffee chat, so it's not like a really big question and answer thing. I just let my guests have the floor because the podcast really is all about them. The third step is to arrange your podcast, and this is where you have an engaging intro. So through the process, you find the right music, you find the right graphics, and you put that at the start of your videos, and then you formulate an outro, which is your call to action, basically. So if you want people to go to your website, or if you've got a course or a program, or an ebook that you want them to buy or get a hold of, or you can sell merchandise, even if you've got merchandise that you want to sell. So it just becomes easier when you edit your you edit your intros and your outros, and it helps the podcast, give it some structure, and some people become aware of what you're doing. And the final step is to launch your podcast. And this is where we learn about launching and distributing your podcast, and it's the final step, basically. It's podcast distribution is, I guess, simply sharing your podcast on listening platforms like Apple or Google or Spotify, one of those. And this is how you reach a really large audience. And so it helps your listeners find your show. So it's a bit like a TV channel, a podcast distribution. So my 4-step system, the Opal system, will get your podcast up and running. So let's look at each section and how they relate to the modules of the program. So the first one is the organize. And so module 1, it sets you up for success. And this is where we lay the foundations for your podcast. So if you've already got an idea, that's wonderful. That is really good. But during the program, we'll work out if it's a good fit, if the title's great, if it's too long, if it's too short. It will grab an audience. So all of that is done in the first module of, in part of the first module. But the very first thing we need to be aware of is podcasting and the law. It's very important that we be mindful to avoid problems with our podcast, and don't forget to consider all the legal risks that are involved, like libel and all of those things. Next step is we choose our program strategy. So this is where you find your perfect niche. If you've got a business, you probably already know what your niche is. But then again, if you've got a business and you have another interest and you want to podcast about that, this is where we nut out, where it would be fit in, like, business, entrepreneurship, health, wellness, all of those sorts of things. Then we also work out whether you should have a guest or you want to be solo. The choice is yours. The next section in module 1 is how to choose the perfect name and cover art for your podcast. And there is a practical exercise that we go through, and we create a template for that. It must be said that you cannot register your podcast without cover art. None of the platforms will allow you to do anything unless you've got cover art. So you can put all the information in that you want, but if cover art's not the right size, it has too many words on it, there are a lot of criteria to register with a podcast distributor. The 4th step in the first module is how we set up on the channels. So you've got to find a podcast channel, and you need to register with those. You use that by using your RSS feed from your main podcast host. And then we learn about podcast distribution and where to do that and how to do that. And the 5th place is how to set up the perfect studio on a budget. So what you need to have and what is nice to have. Now, I started my podcast with just a laptop, and I just used my laptop camera and my laptop microphone. And as I progressed through, I bought a USB camera. A lot of people use DSLRs, but really you don't need to go to all that expense to do that unless you want a really professional looking thing. But a lot of people, are happy just to use a USB plug-in. And I've got a USB plug-in microphone as well. I prefer the Rode type microphones, but you can get Blue Yetis as well. So we'll just go through a little bit about, some of the steps. So podcasting and the law, you must be mindful of the laws in your particular country, and this will avoid a heap of problems in the future. So as podcasting grows, the likelihood of being in the legal spotlight is increasing, and irrespective of the size of your audience, you still can face legal issues, and you should really conduct a legal stock take to assess your legal risks and implement risk mitigation strategies. So mainstream media platforms, including newspapers and TV networks, often receive legal threats, and maybe their articles or their programs are defamatory or unlawful in some way. We've often heard about it in the news. So you've got to be mindful that when publishing content which is consumed by an audience and or a podcast, they carry very similar legal risks. And podcasters and organisations that host them need to be mindful of the risks and avoid any issues. So one of the first things that you need to be mindful of is checking for any suppression orders that may, be out there. If it's, if you're broadcasting perhaps about legal issue or, things that are prominent in the news, and there's some suppression order or some court-ordered suppression, then you need to be mindful that you aren't going against those orders, because you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. Another one is defamation, and we've all heard that celebrities are suing newspapers for defamation. So we need to be mindful of the nature of the content that you're using. Is it controversial? Is it contentious? Just be mindful of what you say. Whether it's about an individual subject, and be mindful of your content, and whether the allegations or the assertions that you might be making in your episode about an individual are supported by provable facts and evidence. So if it's provable and there is evidence, then yes, you can. But if you're only going on hearsay, then please don't bother, because you'll end up in court. Excuse me, I just went to take a drink. The mouth's getting a bit dry. You've got to be mindful about assessing for misleading or deceptive conduct. So if you're incorporating advertisements into your podcast, where you read out ads for another business, or you post ads on your social media pages, you must ensure that it's not misleading or deceiving to your audience. And we find this a lot on Facebook, where there's a lot of scammers and spammers out there that if you click on a link, and recently I've just been made an administrator for a podcast group that I'm a member of. There was a lot of sexual things being posted in the group, and some of them were quite explicit. And the lady that runs the group doesn't have the time to do it herself, so I offered to do it for her. And it's just so you just got to be mindful about clicking on links, and that you're not promoting spam, or you're not trying to scam anyone. Any of the statements that you use, whether you're presenting a product or a service, should be true and accurate. And there is consumer laws in Australia, and I'm sure that will be globally. There will be laws defining, where you have to be truthful when you're advertising a product or service. Another thing that you need to do and ensure is that you provide your guests with a guest release form, which gives you the right to use their image if they provide one, use their bio if they provide one, and that you own the rights to your podcast. Otherwise, people can just take your episodes and cut them up, and and perhaps make you not shown in the best light. So be mindful that you need a release and consent form. I put mine at the bottom of my guest form, where they fill out their details, and that just provides a legal relationship between the rights and responsibilities of the guest and me as the host. Be also aware of intellectual property. If something belongs to somebody else, make sure that you have permission to use it, whether it's something from someone else's podcast or a YouTube video or an image of some type. Make sure that you get permission to use that. In the program, I've got a video in there from one of my guests, but because she's given me a media release, then I'm allowed to use it. However, I asked if I could use one of her videos, and she declined. So the only way I could get round that information was to use my pre-recorded one. So there is, things like copyright acts and laws and things that you need to be mindful of all the time. Make sure that you offer a disclaimer if you're giving advice. So if you're giving medical advice, for instance, and you're not a medical practitioner, then please, give some sort of disclaimer to say that you aren't a medical practitioner. Same for bookkeeping or accounting or any of those other types of professions. Make sure that if you are not qualified, that either one, you don't give the advice, or two, you put a disclaimer to say that this is advice only, and you aren't qualified as a person to be able to give that advice. So the next thing now is to how to find your perfect podcast niche. And as with all competition, finding the right niche for your podcast is more crucial than ever. So, and here's how to get it right and connect with your audience. And we'll just take a bit of a break here for a moment. If there's any questions, pop them in the chat. I'd love to know what's going on, and see what everyone's thinking about the process so far, and if you've got any questions about that. No, then we'll continue on if that's okay. Thank you, Sarah. Is it Sarah? I hope so.
Sarah just messaged to say that she is planning a podcast, so that's fantastic. It'd be great.
Oh, it
Sarah,
is wonderful news, yes.
If you can type in the chat and just tell us what part of the process are you up to so far? Have you got it organised? Have you got your cover art organised? The things that so far Rose has spoken about, do you have all of those things sorted? Love you to just type in the chat, or feel free to unmute and speak. That works both well for us as well, while Rose gets her slides back up.
I was actually typing, but it was going to be quite a long response. So yeah, I will unmute then. Sorry, my video's not the greatest today, so I've got my camera off. But basically I have already launched my podcast. I've released 2 episodes. I'm still in that beginning stage. I've found my niche. I've got the name and everything. I just feel like there's so much to learn about podcasting. So that's why I thought I'd just jump on today. I love so far the legalities of it, like the legal things, because I think, a lot of people aren't aware of that type of thing when you're doing a podcast, especially if it's just for fun or, just a casual spot, like a safe space for yourself. And, I didn't really consider the legalities of it. So it's interesting. I've made my notes. I am making notes as you're writing. So you're doing as you're speaking, I am writing notes. So you're doing really well so far. I know it's not easy to kind of hop on and do a presentation like this, but I am learning a lot already. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Fantastic. Thank you for the encouragement.
I love it. And Sarah, in our last group, we had a girl who'd already been running her podcast for quite a long time, in fact, many years. And she just wasn't getting the traction that she needed. And after she worked with Rose, her podcast has exploded. And
wow.
she's now running retreats. So she's she's amassed a population around her, a community around her of people that are listening to what she's got to say. And now this weekend, she's actually launching her first retreat. So it's amazing how this can grow and expand your business. But let's keep listening, because Rose has got so much more to share.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so you can't be everything to everyone when you're finding your niche. So when you're starting your podcast, it's easy to think that, the broader that you're throwing the information at, it's the better, because you want your show to appeal to everybody. But when you don't have an existing audience, you need to narrow your focus and to choose a content niche that you can own. And this is because if you don't, it's going to be hard for you to stand out. I mean, there's 3.5 million podcasts out there. So, you've got to try and find your way up the ladder. And it's not an easy journey to, get to, the top 100 even. So choosing your podcast niche helps you to more easily define the concept of your show. And it's more likely that you'll be able to separate your show from other podcasts that are already out there. So finding your perfect niche is, can be a little bit difficult. I know I had in the last class someone who was a bit undecided about where they wanted to go. And so after a bit of discussion, what they eventually focused on was a lot narrower than what they had originally started out as. So, many podcasters, they know right away, what they want to produce and what their show's all about. But sometimes, you just can't decide. So it's good to write down the things that you want to share, and then your niche will come through, after you go through the list of topics that you want to share, and then you can work out where you want to target that. So we all sort of know what a niche is, but it's and if you don't, and you don't want your podcast to just be a general knowledge thing, you need to know who your target audience is. So for example, there's a podcast about history of the gay rights movement in the UK, is much more niche than a general history podcast, put it that way.
We can't see your slides, Rose. Are we supposed to be seeing your slides?
I'm not sharing?
Oh, no, we can't see slides. We just see your beautiful face.
Oh, I do apologise. I'm sorry. That would be helpful. Thank you, Charlene. It's important to make a good first impression. So it doesn't stop with the cover art. And having a really great piece of cover art is great. That's something that stands out and is memorable. And you can use this obviously to promote your show. As I said before, you can't register your podcast without cover art. So make sure that it's not bland, it's not uninspiring. Make sure that it's colourful. A lot of people are using black, and a lot of people are putting podcast microphones in their cover art. Really, we know it's a podcast. In my mind, why are you putting a microphone there? I think, your picture and what your podcast is about, a graphic or some sort of image on there about what your podcast is about. I think that is much more easy to remember rather than just having a microphone there. There are some rules about your podcast art. So it's part of your marketing basically, and it will, as I said, help your podcast to stand out, and it makes you look more professional, and it may even get you featured on some of the podcast pages. People that promote podcasts, they might ask you to be a guest because your cover art's been, standing out to them. So let's talk a little bit about the technicalities of creating your artwork. If you want to get the right amount of visibility for your podcast, you need to ensure that your cover art is accepted by all major podcast directories. If your cover art doesn't meet the size criteria, which is most are 1400 by 1400 pixels, or 3000 by 3000 pixels. So make sure that they're either of those two sizes, but they will let you know which size that they prefer. I think Apple is 3000 and I think Spotify's 1400. So I would make two different sizes of cover art to be able to use both channels, obviously. There are a couple of ways to design your cover art. You can either do it yourself, or you can pay someone else to do it. And doing it for free, I use Canva to create mine. I did have mine professionally done when I first started, but I didn't like it all that much. But you can use things like Adobe InDesign or Adobe Photoshop, or as I said, you can Canva, or you can go to paid ones. You can go to Adobe Spark, you can go to Taylor Brands, You can use 99 Designs, and with 99 Designs, you get good artwork from $299 to $1,399, which is really expensive. You can go to Fiverr, you can get them from $500 to nearly $1,000. So just be aware that, if there is a cost involved, be prepared to pay good money for it, because there is a big market for podcast art. And so the more the market, the higher the price, obviously. So we're going on now to choose and set up your perfect podcast channel. So this is where we'll find your podcast host channel and register. We'll use your RSS feed and we'll learn what that is, and how to distribute your podcast. So as I said before, it's really important that you make a brilliant first impression when you're first launching your podcast. So it doesn't just start with your podcast art cover. There's a lot of other things that they're involved in. One of the first things is to find a hosting service. Now, what does a hosting service do? Well, it's basically like a place where you put all your podcast episodes, and then that gets distributed to other channels. So I use SoundCloud, and I use also podcast.co. Either of those is what I use, but there are others out there that you can use to host your podcast. But what happens is that they take your podcast and they distribute it to people like Apple and Spotify and all the other channels out there, so that you don't have to do it yourself. It's a really great way to save yourself time and money. I did it the other way around when I first started. I went to each of the different channels and actually uploaded it myself. But the only trouble if you do that, if you change your art, your cover art at any time, then you need to actually delete your podcast and then re-register. And it's not so simple. I'm actually trying to get onto Listener, which is a big radio station run by Listener. They have radio stations and podcasts. I'm actually trying to get registered on there at the moment, but I'm finding it a little bit difficult. There's not a lot of information out there that helps me to do that. So when you register for your podcast host, you want to distribute it to other channels, you need to use your RSS feed. Now, what is an RSS feed? This is what makes your podcast your podcast, because each podcast has its own unique code, and this unique code helps you be identified by other distributors. So it's like pretty much like the engine in your car, or the serial number on your devices. That's what it is. So without your RSS feed, your podcast isn't complete. It has all the powers that you need to get yourself out there. And what RSS stands for is really simple syndication. Now, I didn't know that until recently. I just called it an RSS feed, but I had no idea what it meant. So that's what it is. It's called really simple syndication. And it makes a lot of sense that if you don't have an RSS feed, then you can't be identified. So, just think of it as the news feed or your Instagram feed, or, it's how your posts are published. So what this feed contains is your show title. It contains your episode details. It contains, who you are, who your guest is, what episode number, all of those sorts of things. So it has everything necessary to add your podcast to all of the directories that are available to you. And it all gets passed to directories like Apple and Spotify. And when you add and publish a new episode, your RSS feed updates to reflect that information and pushes it to the directories that you've got syndicating your podcast. So they're either created by podcast hosts, or you can create your own. I would just prefer to use the one that my host creates for me, because it just saves a lot of headache, and make sure that it gets put out there to the masses. The next thing is your podcast distribution. So what this is it's simply sharing your podcast on listening platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And this helps you reach a larger audience. And so it just means that listeners will be able to find your show. And how are podcasts distributed? Well, there are tons of platforms that provide this service. Almost all podcast hosting platforms will help you to distribute your podcast to the top platforms like Spotify, Apple, and so forth. And this is how you use your RSS feed. So listeners will automatically receive your podcast via your feed. And when you upload new episodes, then each of the distribution channels will have your most up-to-date information. For the ones that have just joined us, thank you so much for being here. I had forgotten about daylight saving time here in Australia, so that we have started an hour early. So I do apologise to anyone who's come in now, but the recording will be available in the email that I will send out after this is finished. So thank you for being here. So the next thing is to choose your program strategy, and this is the place where we learn what is nice to have and what do we actually need. So the first step I would do is set up a budget for your podcast kit. So please, please, please don't go and buy all this whiz-bang, hugely expensive equipment. Just start off simply. I mean, you can even use your smartphone when you're first starting out. You don't have to have expensive microphones or expensive cameras or all of those other whiz-bang tools that you find professional podcasters using. Just start simple, and just make sure that you know how to use it, that it's working, the sound is great, and don't worry too much if your video is not so great, because one of the tips that I've learned, that people don't mind if your visuals aren't that great, but what they won't forgive you for is bad audio. So make sure that the audio is crisp and clear. If you're using Zoom has a background noise remover, but I also take the other precaution of using an app called Crisp. It's KRISP, and that is a noise suppression app that you can use from your desktop, and you can also use it on your phone. Love it. It takes away any background noise. So if there's dogs barking or there's construction work outside your window, you won't hear any of that. So so keep it really simple. So the streaming setup for beginners is, as I said before, just start off simply. If you don't have a laptop, which some people don't have, you can still use your phone. But if you've got a laptop or a desktop computer, then just start off using the audio and the camera from that. It's just make sure that it's crisp and clear and that there's no background noise. So that's the Opal system. So we've gone through organize, and we've gone through produce, how to present and host your podcast. Well, now we're up to, we're up to produce now, which is module 2. Wow. Just take another drink. So now that you've got a solid foundation for your podcast, it's time to start presenting and producing. So in module 2, or the second step of the Opal process, you'll learn how to present and host your podcast like you're a pro and like you've been doing it forever, so that you sound calm, you sound confident, you sound in control, even if you're quaking in your boots. Like when I first started, I was so nerve-wracking, a bit like I feel today. So the first step is how to be a great host. Now, this is really, really important. And we'll go through some interview do's and don'ts. And there's some 10 common podcasting mistakes and how to avoid them. The second step is building your confidence on camera and how to look your best and, sound your best. How to find your perfect guests. I use an online, I guess you'd call it an app. It's called matchmaker.fm, but there are others out there where you can find guests, and we'll also go about how to formulate your guest form, which is really, really important. Don't have a podcast without a guest form. And the next step is how to engage your audience. So besides uncovering interesting and relevant information chosen by the person that you're interviewing, podcasts can be easily consumed, and you can actually repurpose all the content for that. The next step is how to promote your podcast. So tips on how to send emails to your guests, post podcast, and things leading up to your podcast. And finally, and this is the biggest module, is how to produce, is how to work out the stats for your podcast. So how you can monitor places to go to find out that information and how to understand what they mean. So how to be a great host. Now, recently, I interviewed someone yesterday, actually, who said to me that I was a great host because I allowed them to give out their information without interruption. It wasn't like a question and answer type of thing. As I said early on in this masterclass, I love to give the floor to my guests because the podcast is about them. It's not about me. And and the coffee chat type process that I use works really well for me, and it makes the guests feel really comfortable. And because some of them, have never been interviewed before, and some of them, it might be their first time that they've ever been on a podcast. So, just be mindful to make them feel relaxed, and so they're not under pressure. So one of the tips that I could offer you is, your tone of voice is really important. If you go in cheerful, don't be, all sad faced and have a great tone, not squeaky or over loud or all of those things. Always have really engaging questions. I don't write any questions down. I just let the conversation flow, and then I ask questions relevant to information that my guest has shared. I find that a good process for me. And I don't know, it just seems to help the episodes flow more easily. I interview for 30 minutes and the 30 minutes just flies by. I must say that I've had some guests that have been a little bit challenging, and it's been difficult to either get information from them or ask the right questions. But I've got to tell you, I've done nearly 520 interviews, and I have learned a lot about a lot of things. Things that I knew a little bit about, but now I know a lot about. And that's just all through listening to my guests. So, yeah, it's a great way to be able, for you as a host, to learn stuff. So as the host, and if you are in most cases, are the driving force behind the podcast. That makes sense. So becoming a great host takes a certain level of skill, practice, and a bit of expertise. So let's look at how we can bring all those things together with these 10 tips that I'm about to share. What hosting a podcast isn't, you don't have to be like a show host like, Johnny Carson or who else? Rose McManus, if you're living in Australia, or, any of those types of things. Becoming a great host is just being calm, relaxed, being a relaxed atmosphere to the process. To avoid any problems, remember those legal issues. So don't say things that aren't true. Always take a legal stock take of your comments. If you find that you've said something during the interview, or your guest has said something in the interview that's a bit controversial, you can always edit it out. Not everyone on camera. Charlene, could you please share that did I put that as a bonus, the tips and things? No, I didn't. No,
yes, we've got the bonuses and we're sharing them at the end, Rose.
Yep,
so
lovely.
I've got them ready to go to share with everybody.
Thank you. All right, so there are some tips to speaking on camera if you're not comfortable doing it, because not everyone, let's face it, is born to love the camera, or your smartphone, or whatever it is that you're using. I know that I don't like presenting on my own. I so dislike doing Facebook Lives. I so dislike doing anything when I'm not actually talking to somebody. I just feel really uncomfortable, and a lot of other people are the same. So, and I get anxious when I have to speak in public as well. I get really nervous. I get tongue-tied. I forget, even though I've practiced whatever it is I want to say. When I get in front of a live audience, I just forget. Everything just goes out the window, and get those butterflies, and you feel sick, and you're dry in the mouth, and all those other things. But there is a science behind this, and I just want to share with you what that science is. When you feel like you're in danger, which is like public speaking, your brain thinks that you're in danger, then there's the fight and flight thing. And you're not in danger when you're doing this, but your brain just thinks it is. And so you get all anxious and just feel all those feels that, make you feel really uncomfortable. But there is a little gland called the hypothalamus, and this triggers your pituitary gland, and it secretes a certain type of hormone. And this hormone is sent to your adrenal medulla, which then sends adrenaline into your blood. And that's when everything starts to happen. And this adrenaline causes a cascade of reactions that can take many forms. Sometimes your neck and back tense up and you tend to slouch. Your muscles are prepared to attack, and your legs and your hands are shaky. Maybe your blood pressure might jump up, or your digestion shuts off and you feel, all butterflies in your stomach, and maybe your pupils might get a little bit dilated, and it's difficult to read anything if you have to. So if any of these things are familiar to you and you've experienced any of those issues, you're not alone. I reckon 99% of us. Charlene doesn't have that problem. I know she's so good at what she does. I love listening to her present. She's just so she just articulates so well, and she just seems so confident. And that's, one of the great things that you need to be able to do when you're a podcast host. So I just wanted to share that little bit of science with you. So a couple of things you can do if you are a host is prepare to make mistakes, and don't bag yourself out if you're not perfect, because no one expects you to be perfect except for Charlene. I think she's the perfect host. Love you, darling. So sometimes if you're in a nervous state, there's a thing called mental anchoring, and you find a place on your body, you hold that place, it makes you feel calm. I'm doing it right now. I use between my thumb and my index finger, and I just I press on it when I start to feel a little bit nervous, and that seems to calm me down. Another way is you can take some deep breaths, and it's called belly breathing, and it just helps you to focus and to de-stress. And sometimes if you take about 3 really deep breaths and really fill up your diaphragm with air, it can help you feel absolutely relaxed. And sometimes you'll also notice that if you're nervous, your voice goes up a few octaves. You sound like this. So yeah, having a mental anchor and doing those deep belly breaths is really good for you. And remember to focus your gaze on something. This will allow you to appear more confident, and whether you're feeling it or you're not feeling it. Finding your perfect guests, as I said, I use matchmaker.fm. I love it. There is a free option. I use the paid version. It's only, I think it's $16 Australian a month. But I've got 99% of my guests through them, and that's where the Healing Through Love podcast get their guests as well. But there are other platforms. Charlene, you might refresh my memory. What's that one that you use for speaking?
There's several, but I also like Facebook groups that are dedicated to finding guests and supporting podcasts, because it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with them. Many of the other applications are not really so user-friendly. So most people are on Facebook mostly. So it gives you a great opportunity to be in a community of people who are looking for guests, and are also, you can look for guests as well.
Thank you. There are a myriad of podcast groups. I think I belong to about 20 of them at the moment. And they allow you to not only find a guest or be a guest, but also allow you to promote your podcast episodes or your podcast in entirety. But there is another one. It's more used for the media. But the name escapes me at the moment. We were using it, but it's not very user friendly, and I didn't like it all that much. Some people can't follow instruction, even though you write really detailed instructions, they still can't follow them, and it makes it a little bit frustrating as a host, especially if you're doing a lot of podcast episodes every week like I do. When I first started, I was doing 5 interviews 5 days a week. And so it was like huge. And so people didn't follow instruction. It just made it more time consuming for me to find all the information that I needed. I've actually narrowed it down now to 3 interviews twice a week, because there is such a thing as called podcast burnout. And we'll get into that afterwards, but it is a thing. So we'll get back to finding the guests. Using social media is a great tool for, as Charlene said, to locate your guests, but each platform is unique, and you need to find one in your area, or one that suits you. Because I use one doesn't mean that it suits you to use the same thing. So you just need to work out which one suits you better. And as I said, and Facebook groups, as Charlene has mentioned, and I said that you can share your podcast in there. So it's another way to get your podcast out there, other than the distribution channels that are the norm. So another way to find is invite guests with recent or upcoming publications. So, if you've been following along on Facebook, you see that someone's launched a book, and perhaps it's in your niche, then, invite them onto your podcast and interview them about their book, and they will have obviously other expertise that they can share. Cross-promote your podcast with other content creators. Meet potential guests in real life, so go to networking events and invite them onto your podcast if they're a good fit for you. Reach out via email or through social media. Don't forget to use your email contacts as well, and maybe send out a questionnaire or a survey, or do something and find out what their niche is, and if it fits, if it's a good fit for your podcast, then invite them on. Besides uncovering interesting and relevant information chosen by your guest, podcasts can be used in other ways. So you can, make long form content like blog posts or articles for magazines, or you can make it into short form content like social media posts or short little videos, reels, all those sorts of things. So some tips to create podcast content is it does take time and it does take work. I am thinking about outsourcing mine now. I'm going to have my first hire very soon because it is time consuming, and when you've got so many other things going on, that part of creating that short engaging content is, can be a challenge. One of the biggest reasons to focus on creating content is its ability to build a loyal fan base, and true listeners of your podcast, so followers of your podcast, will help it be successful. And quite often they'll leave a positive review on an episode that they've listened to or on your podcast channel in general. So if you want engaged listeners, you obviously have to create great content. So there are, some ways you can do that. And the next one is the follow-up. Really important that you follow up with your guests with an email. I usually send mine out about an hour afterwards, asking them, if they've got any comments that they'd like to make, whether they had a good time on the episode or whether I needed to do something different. And I must say that I've received some negative feedback from my guests from time to time, and that's okay. That's okay. Don't knock yourself for it. This is a learning experience, and you learn as you go. Sometimes I haven't been prepared as well as I should have been. So, and this affects the quality of the interview. But I also include in this email to my guests post interview, asking them to leave a review or to send a video to me, with a review that I can post on my website. And that's just a good way to, I guess, thank them for appearing on your show, and a way to receive feedback for either a job well done or a job not so well done. And I do this by having an automatic email go out about an hour after the interview's been conducted, and it should include a short thank you note for them appearing on your podcast, and what's going to happen with the audio and the video after the episode's been edited, where they can find it, how, if you're going to be sending them out links and any graphics and all those sorts of really great things that are important to build good relationship with your guests. How to understand your podcast stats. When I first started, I didn't understand what any of them meant, but it takes a little while to understand. Each of the places that you can find the stats act differently. They have different information. I've got to fly. And so it's really important to learn how to do that. And, because they can be a little bit confusing, but it is nice to know where you're standing in the world. Now, the highest I've ever ranked in globally is number 14 in New Zealand. That was last year in June. Recently, I was number 93 in Poland, and I was number 17 in Albania, of all places. I didn't even think they spoke English in Albania, but yes, I ranked as number 17. So there you go. I've appeared, I think, 81st in Australia for business, under the business category, because you can, when you go to your distribution channels, you can nominate a category like business, entrepreneurship, marketing, any of those sorts of things, health and wellness, There's a big long list that you can choose from. And these statistics, they can help you to measure the performance of your show. And it lets you sometimes set strategic directions. My goal was to be in the top 10 in Australia by the end of this year. I haven't ranked there since last year, so I'm still trying, but I'll just keep endeavouring to do that, because I think my podcast is worth listening to. And as we all do, we all think our podcast is the greatest. Don't worry about pie charts or line graphs or any of those sorts of things. I mean, really, unless you're really pedantic about it, don't worry about them. Just go to places like Chartable.com. It's CHARTABLE.com. They give really good, that tells you your ranking. Podtrack, PODTRAC.com. They give you your unique global audience, and I think my unique global audience is sitting about 35,000 an episode, so I'm really happy with that. So yeah, things you can brag about, because my family didn't understand what I was doing, and when I told them where I was ranking in the world, they thought it was like the best thing since sliced cheese. So things, there are words that these trackers use. It's like a download, how many downloads you've had. This is just a download of an episode. It doesn't mean that the person's listened to it. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that it's been downloaded from your platform. A thing called a stream doesn't exist in podcasting at all. A listen or a play is when we know a human has pressed the play button. So it's got to be, I think, 3 to 5 seconds that they've listened to it. That is considered a play. And total audience numbers really, as far as the research that I've done, can't be accurately worked out from your downloads. So any podcast statistic platform that says that they know your total audience numbers, it doesn't exist as far as I can find out. But as long as you've got a number of plays, but as long as someone's played it for 3 seconds, in my mind, they've listened to it. So which statistic matters the most? Some are more important than others. People do use the word streams, and they tell you how many people have pressed play on your podcast. But this is only a good indication of the initial plays. It doesn't mean how long someone's been listening to your podcast. So I said someone can press play for 3 seconds, and that's considered a statistic. Don't ask me why, but we can't, I don't think they could actually work out how long someone's actually listened. Downloads do not accurately reflect audience engagement. Many people will download a podcast and never listen to it. So don't take downloads as a gospel. Subscriptions, however, show the number of listeners who want to listen to or see more of an episode or your whole podcast in general. They're a good measure of your long-term success, and showing how many listeners you've accrued over time. You can see a build-up of that, from the very beginning. Although the full extent of the algorithms used really can't be measured at this point. I don't think they can actually do that. Now on to the next part of the Opal system, the third part. And this is how to arrange your podcast. So the importance of editing. So this is where we learn to put everything together, and how to, we'll take you through recording options, ensure that your audio is of the highest possible quality, so it doesn't sound like you're recording in a echo hall or whatever that might be. So the first thing is create professional intro and outro. So where to find royalty-free background music, and using royalty-free images and videos. And a good place to do that is Adobe Stock. They have them. You can find them in Canva, of course, and a few others, but just make sure that it's royalty-free on both counts. editing your podcast, so how to the how-to of how to do it, and what programs and apps that you might need. How to transcribe your audio, so how to strip the audio from your video, and there's a process that you can use to do that. So it's really important to use royalty-free background music and royalty-free images and videos. And you can either purchase them or you can find them for free. Now, Adobe Stock charges about $40 Australian a month, and you get 10 assets, but you can buy others on top of that. As I say, you can use Canva, whatever, but and I use Wondershare Filmora. They have a lot of images in there. I've got a lifetime license, but I don't think a license is that expensive to buy through there. So you've done all the hard work. You found your guest, you've prepped your content, you've recorded your content. Now it's time to do all that polishing stuff over the top, and it's time to learn how to edit a podcast. So we all know that you're trying to you're trying to create a podcast that your listeners will keep coming back and listening to more. So get more downloads, you get better guests, and you get a growing revenue. I must say, with my podcast, I'm actually getting podcast agencies coming to me now. Greg Doan, who I'm sure we've all heard of, has a speakers bureau, and his guests are now coming my way through my podcast. Just being out there. So it's tough creating that kind of content that will get people coming back and coming back. So it's really important the editing is really top notch, and for beginners, it can be really intimidating, and it can be so mind-blowing because there's just so much information out there how to do it. So we often, record our episodes and then just let them sit on the computer because you don't have the knowledge or expertise, about how to go to edit them. So there are some easy steps that you can take. Depending on your budget, time constraints, or whether you prefer to learn new skills or maybe you want to outsource this stuff, editing is the shiny, polishy thing, as I said at the top. And the value is in the content of what you edit, but just remember that you need to keep improving it all the time. And once you realize how your audio can be edited, it'll come easy to you. And it used to take me about 2.5 hours to edit one episode, but now the whole process takes me about 2 hours. That's to edit the episode and then upload it. And the uploading takes the longest amount of time, especially to YouTube. It seems to take forever to go through the process. But once you've perfected the technique, as I said, it will just be like second nature to you. And just remember that editing can make or break the whole episode. So before you start editing your podcast audio, you must make sure that you have all of the tools that you need at hand, because failure to do this might make you lose focus as you pay more attention to the technicalities of editing rather than the editing process itself. So before you begin, listen to the raw audio all the way through and take notes on what your listeners really must hear. I mean, I have a plan with what I do, but it might not work for you, so I won't go into that too much. But plan your editing as you plan to record it. So remember, excuse me, just take another drink. Just remember that editing is just making it all better and all come together in a cohesive way. When you are recording, again, make sure that you are using a great microphone. Make sure that it's in a quiet room somewhere. Ensure that you've done your research on your guest or the topic that you're going to go and speak about if you're doing a solo one. And if you do all these things in the correct way, then editing your podcast really doesn't become a chore. It becomes something that you enjoy doing. And finally, we're going to launch our podcast. This is the final step in the process. So we'll learn how to publish your podcast and how to and where to. because, once you've done all this work, you really want to know how to get more eyes and ears on your episodes and become successful, because we don't do podcasts, in my mind, not to be a success at doing them. It's a bit like, becoming a runner or a gymnast or any of those things. You don't do it just for the pleasure of it. You do it to have some sort of great outcome. So how to establish yourself as an authority, and why is that important? Of course it's important. You want to be seen as the go-to for whatever it is that you're speaking about, or if you're offering a service or a product, that you're the go-to person for that particular thing. Also, how to be a great guest. There are rules on becoming a great guest, and there are ways that you should conduct yourself on doing that. How to monetize your podcast. And then finally, there is a program overview. So, we just, when you go through the Master the Art of Podcasting program, there is a review at the end where everything comes together, and you revisit some topics that you may have missed out on. So now we want to, launch and distribute your podcast. So, this is the exciting piece where you get out there to the public. Now, a word to the wise: don't do what I did and just put your podcast out there. Make sure you make a big song and dance about it, about 3 weeks before, to say that you're launching your podcast. This will get people excited. I didn't do that, so it took me a really long time to build up my audience. But if I had had this big launch and let people know that it was coming, then probably my engagement in the first few episodes would have been a lot better than what it was. So that's just my words to you. Make sure that you do that if you're going to launch your podcast. So I guess there are a few statistics about publishing, and these are American stats, and I'm sorry I couldn't find any Australian ones, but over 20% of Americans are more than 10 years old when they listen to a podcast. And people listen to at least one podcast a month. Apple Podcasts has over 1 billion subscribers throughout the world. Radio Addict is a podcast network for Android, has recorded over 10 million downloads. And Podcaster is also a podcast network on Android. Android has likewise recorded 10 million downloads. Now, that is a lot of downloads, 10 million. Huge, huge. Why do you want to establish yourself as an authority? Why do people go out of their way to seek the best that money can buy? Same reason. They're trying to fill a void in their life, but it's hard to ignore that people want what others have. Either it's a luxury item, a service, or a product. So you want to be known as the person to go to for that particular thing. And it's also a great way to create a brand, your personal brand, where people know that you are the person to go to. Ad placement is where you place your ad in your podcast episode. I would suggest that you do it in the very beginning or in the middle. Not very often at the end. Only reason being is that people will listen to the beginning of your podcast, and they often get to about the middle before they get, either bored or whatever. So, try and put it in the middle. But at the end, a lot of people won't listen to the end of your podcast, so it's a bit pointless putting your ad there. But once you have that podcast audience, then you might think about putting them at the end, because you know that that they're going to listen till the end of the podcast. A little bit about Talking with the Experts. It was launched on the 13th of July in 2020, and as I said, I've got about 520 uploaded episodes. I've got 504 uploaded episodes, and I've got about 520 interviews that I've done. And my monthly unique monthly listenership is about 35,000. So that's not too bad. So if I can start a podcast with over 500 interviews and over 35,000 unique monthly listeners, and I'm sure that you can do it as well. It's not that hard. I started with, and mine has been trial and error the whole way. Shalini, if you could put the those links up now, please.
For the bonuses, Rose?
No, the Facebook group, please.
Yep, the Facebook group is up.
Thank you very much. So if you want to, if you've already got a podcast, I've launched a new group where you can promote your podcast in there. You can find guests, or you can conversely become a guest on someone else's podcast, which is a great way to be able to network with others, get great guests. Next step. Oh yes, bonuses. There's 2 bonuses in the group at the moment. One is how to simple tips to show up on camera like a pro, and how to become a great guest. So please take advantage of those. You can download them by clicking on the links that Charlene shared. And you can also, I just wanted to share with you one other thing, that podcasts are outnumber audio books by 6 to 1. 6 to 1. That was between 2009 and 2020. That's a statistic that's been brought up. So if you would like to join my exclusive group coaching program and unlock the secrets to creating and launching a hugely successful podcast within the next 6 weeks, using my unique Opal system that I will guide you through each step of the way process and hold your hand through everything, I will make sure and help you make sure that your podcast stands out, that it grows rapidly and can turn into a profitable venture for you, even if you're still unsure about your podcast topic. Don't miss this opportunity to work closely with me and transform your podcast dreams into reality. And these are just some stats I wanted to share with you. As of January 2023, there were 3.02 million podcasts in the world. And podcasts outnumbered audio books by 6 to 1. And almost 30 million podcast episodes were published last year. So the growth of the podcast industry has naturally brought an increase in the number of available podcasts. The pandemic related podcasts in 2020, they just boomed out of this world. People started their podcasting journey in 2020 because, you know, they had things to talk about and not much else to do. And podcasting is likely to continue to increase in the future. So why undertake the group program using this Opal system that we've gone through today? Well, as podcasting has risen in prominence in the past decade, evolving from a niche medium to a global powerhouse, millions of people are tuning into these episodes every day. And whether you need to be educated, you need to be inspired, and podcasts are on YouTube now. So, you know, you can use the videos or the audio depending on your preference. But this program is mainly aimed at those running a service-based business. If you've got a product, unless you're going to be doing product-based ads throughout the whole entire podcast, then it becomes a thing like on Channel 10 where you have those really late night things and all their advertising is cheap, nasty things. But yeah, if you're a service-based business, then this program is definitely for you. Again, we'll go through the Opal system. You'll learn how to organize your podcast and lay the foundations for your professional podcast. You'll learn how to produce and present your podcast like you've been doing it forever. You'll be able to arrange and edit your podcast to the really highest quality standard, and you'll be able to launch your podcast and get the best out of your out of yourself and, find that really great audience that everyone's been looking at. It's a way to, it's an opportunity to build authority. So every service-based business thrives on trust, and people will not employ a service if they do not trust the provider. And with the Opal system, it emphasizes building authority through podcasting. It has a well-structured and informative podcast that with a well-structured and informative podcast, service providers can demonstrate their expertise in a particular subject, and that way they can enhance their image in the eyes of potential clients. You'll have a personal connection with your audience. Unlike written content, podcast owners can show their expertise through video or through audio. They can, share that expertise. They can show their personality. They can show their passion. And, listeners can hear to intonations. They can listen to the excitement in the presenter's voice. And they can also hear the sincerity. The Opal system will teach how to use your voice modulation, how to use engagement techniques, and how to use storytelling to, get your point across. And by mastering these, service-based businesses can create a personal bond with their listeners and make it more likely that they'll engage with your content. There's more accessibility and flexibility in having a podcast, and you will learn that through the Opal system. Not everyone has the time to read or to watch a video, so having a podcast where you can just stick your earphones on in like an audio podcast, you can go walking, you can driving, you can go running, you can be sitting at the table, eating your breakfast. Listening to a podcast is so easy for people these days, where things weren't done before. So the Opal system will guide you through how to create all this content and ensure that, businesses will come to you or clients will come to you to provide your services. You can use it as a leverage for networking. One of the hidden benefits of podcasting is networking opportunities. By interviewing industry experts, they become known to you, you become known to them, and you can share ideas. So using the Opal system, this place is a great, this will provide a great way to learn how to network with your guests and with your clients. It's also a very affordable marketing strategy because advertising can be quite expensive. So if you advertise on your podcast, then you'll get more people to listen. The more people you get listening to your podcast, the more you can get people to buy your services. You can become adaptable to what the market needs because the digital landscape is always evolving. What works today may not work tomorrow, as we know with algorithms in LinkedIn and Facebook and such like. So the skills that you'll learn in the Opal system will teach you about market trends, ensuring that your content remains relevant. Also a way to diversify your content. So, you often face challenges with presenting your services in diverse formats. So podcasting offers a fresh medium to discuss topics that might seem mundane in written format. So with the Opal system's guidance, even topics like choosing the right plumbing service can be made engaging and informative because you can use story and metaphors and so forth to get your audience engaged. It's also a benefit to long-term brand building. So like, excuse me. So if you're using advertising, that's really great, but podcasts leave a lasting impact with your audience. So there are evergreen podcasts, which means they can be accessed and appreciated long after release. And, having something that's evergreen keeps you on the internet for years to come. And, whether you continue with your podcast for a long time, or you just do it for a short time, it's out there for forever and ever. And people might discover you, and you might actually get a new client out of it, years down the track. And the Opal system teaches you how you can do that. So just wrapping up, remember, don't wait for the opportunity, create it, because nothing happens unless you work at it. It doesn't just fall into your lap. So with the benefits and the systematic approach of the Opal system, service-based business owners can, dive right in, start their podcast over the 6 weeks program. Now get down to the nitty-gritties. The program is valued at $17,253, but I'm offering it today for $1,497. However, if you sign up today, you'll get it for $997. That's a huge saving. It's today only. Charlene, if you could put that link up for me, please. Thank you very much. Charlene's put the registration link in the chat for you. There are payment plans available. So today, if you put a deposit down of $175, and then there are 5 equal fortnightly payments of $175, it will cost you a total of $1,050 all up. Prices include GST, so there's no GST on top of those. So if you're undecided about whether you want to, commence training with me, which starts on the 9th of October, so that's only 4 days away, you can find out more information on my website at rosedavidson.com.au, and just click on the Work With Me button, and you'll find all the information under courses and programs there. So just to reiterate, today only is $997. That's a saving of $400, $500. Or you can pay a deposit of $175 and have 5 equal fortnightly payments of $175. As I said, the course commences on the 9th of October, so you've only got 4 days to get in. And thank you so much for being here today. Just stop the share. I think I've got through everything, and it's been a pleasure to be here for you and to share my expertise. Now, before we go, I will pick out. Charlene, could you just help me with this wheel if I share the screen, and tell me who's been and who hasn't?
Well, it's for everyone who's currently here. So
Right.
It would only be Elliot, Deanna, Sarah, and Kay.
Thank
So
you.
we did have somebody actually leave. But so the people that are here at the end are the ones that get the opportunity to win the free subscription.
Jenna.
And while Rose is getting that organised, if you've got any particular questions, now's an opportunity to either unmute, if you're not so much a typer, unmute and ask your questions, and or if you don't want to hear your voice, if you don't want to speak, that's okay. Pop in the chat and share with us any questions you've got. I know in our last group of amazing humans that did this course, we had people in there that already had their podcasts up. And I shared this at the very beginning when Sarah was in the room, is that her podcast was a bit so-so. She wasn't really getting any traction. Now her podcast has grown infinitum, and she's become the expert authority in the area that she is. And she's running her very first retreat this weekend. So it's really catapulted her business to another level. On our last cohort, we had people who had been thinking about doing a podcast for years, finally went through the beautiful process, and at the end launched their podcast. It was amazing. So whether you're yet to launch, or whether you're just thinking about it, or whether or not you've got a podcast and you're looking to scale, this process, this program is so comprehensive, and it's literally hold your hand and take you on the process. And if you get stuck on anything, because this is a group program, you've got that opportunity to get the feedback and help you move forward, whatever it is that your challenge is. So, there's reasons why you haven't launched your program, but, your podcasts before, and Rose will help you overcome those obstacles and bring your beautiful podcast to light and help you shine. And if you think what she's shared in the last 2 hours is amazing, wait till you spend this length of time with her going through the process of unpacking and helping you get to market. She's a wealth of information. She's incredibly humble. I'm sure you've noticed that about her. She's incredibly humble, but it really has made a huge difference. And I don't know if anyone here, if you're a coach, if you can type in the chat, if you're a coach, are you a coach? If you're a coach, type in the chat if you're a coach. Just put yes if you're a coach, because I just would like to explain. So thanks, Diana. Isn't Rose beautiful? We love her too. If you're a coach, just type yes in the chat. I'd love to know who in the room out of Kay, Diana, and Sarah, and Elliot, if you're a coach. Because if you are a coach, or if you help people, even if you're a mentor or anything in that area, I've just got to say the difference that it's made in my business by running a podcast and surrounding myself with my perfect audience has meant that I haven't had to have the ad spend I would normally do to scale my business. So it's been astronomical running a podcast that puts me in front of the right people on a weekly basis. So we've had a beautiful conversation, we've had an interview, and it's a perfect time, a perfect opportunity to have a conversation with them about what's next and what I can offer them to help them move forward. I just can't speak highly enough of Rose. I've known her for a while now, and not only are we business partners in and around Healing Through Love, which is our podcast we run for shifting awareness on family and domestic violence, which this year has gone global, which is huge in itself, and that's only because of the podcast. So even if you're here today, and I know one of you here, I think one of you here is doing something to help Christians, and another one, I think it's you, Elliot, is doing this because you've got a cause and you want to make a difference. I think that's in and around education. So if that's where you're coming from, just think of the power that you can bring to this when you take your podcast to the next level. I'd love it. So yes, I've planned it as part of my marketing strategy. Perfect, Diane. We would love to have you in this group. Now, I've done many other courses on podcasting. None of them got me to market. Isn't that fascinating? If I added up how much money I've spent on doing podcasting courses, none of them are like Rose's. She holds your hand, she helps you forward, and it's a group community. So, you've got an opportunity to ask questions, and her wealth and her depth of knowledge and her humility about what she brings to the table is like second to none. I love it. How long does the course last? Is a question Elliot has asked, Rose?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. So it's 6 weeks. And the best part about it is that you've got this moving forward. So, once you've launched your program, fantastic. You can come back and retweak and shift and change. So that's fantastic. And even if you're not really ready to go to market, everything she gets you to go through, you will be ready, even if you're not ready to launch till later on next year. But this course will make the difference for you. I love it. And the price point, OMG, it's the cheapest one on the market that delivers this level of comprehensivity. Is that a word? I don't know. But it's very comprehensible. You can tell I'm dyslexic. I make up words as I go. I love it. So Diane, we would love to have you. Kay, we would love to have you. Sarah would love to have you. Elliot would love to have you. And right now, we've got one person who's earning the course for free. So, Rose, have you got the wheel ready?
Yep.
Yes? Okay. So if you want to share your screen and share the wheel, drum roll, please.
Oh, I've got Dana in there twice. Hang on. We'll just do it again.
Oh. All right. Okay. And you can take me out too. Take me out. That's because I've already done the course.
Right.
I love it.
Is that
Okay.
it? That's
Ready?
3.
Drum roll.
Elliot, Dana's there. Sarah, Kay. No, there's one missing.
Yeah. So
Elliot.
Yes. Put Elliot in there. So how long does the course last? I was just.
Oh, for heaven's sake, Rose.
All right. Okay. So Elliot's in there. There we go. Okay. We're pressing the button. Drum roll, please. Off you go, Rose.
No, Dana.
Yay!
Yay!
Congratulations.
Sorry, I just got a call from the UK. What just happened?
Diane, you won.
What did I win?
You've won the course. So we will actually send that to you. We'll send that to you. All the
The
details.
universe is looking after me. Thank you. Oh, Rose, it's full circle. I love you, Rose. You know how much I love you. We go
Thanks,
back.
Jenna.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you for joining us today. That brings today to an end. And I just want to make sure that you've given us an email address that works. Just Elliot, Sarah, and Kay. I don't have an email that lines up with the names that are on the screen. So maybe you've got a separate email that you're using, and that's okay. The email that you registered for this event is where your bonuses and also the recording will go as well. Rose, is there anything to add?
No, I just want to thank everyone, Shelley. I want to thank you for being such a great help for me today. I've absolutely loved having you in my proximity yet again. You are someone who inspires me.
Oh, bless. I love doing life with you, and I love how our charity has moved forward and everything. So thanks very much. Diane has given me an email address. Diane has given me an email.
Dana, yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here today. I've hopefully the last 2 hours you've been able to gain some insight on how to organize, produce, arrange and launch your podcast through the Opal system.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic. And thanks, Sarah. I've got another email address for you as well. So that's where your bonuses and the recording and everything will go. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have got no final questions, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.